pep rally, freshman year, Carrie Ringer leaned over to say, "Try reading the Bible, bitch." Now, this was a pithy attack, but it was not otherwise unusual for me, the village atheist in my small Christian town. I hadn't been angry to begin with, but I so was by the time I got out, wondering what in the hell was wrong with these Christian people. I wanted so badly to figure out what was wrong with them that I got into the history of Christianity in college. And this was all going fine until, for my master's program, I was admitted not into the history department as planned, but into the divinity department. And my 3 classmates were a nun, a priest, and an Anglican seminarian. I could have written them off, as I had been by Christians around me, but I didn't want anyone to feel as I had been made to feel, regardless of their faith or lack thereof. So instead, I learned to follow the Christian golden rule. That was the day that I started to become an ally to people of faith. But I didn't know then that I would end up at the Inclusive America Project, supporting American religious pluralism. And I would never have guessed that I would someday so admire a man who booms in his Texas accent, "I love Jesus." That booming proclamation is the first thing that I remember about meeting Pastor Bob. And I remember being sort of astonished at this man so deeply and frankly so loudly proclaiming his Christian faith, while also loving and trusting his Muslim and Jewish neighbors. Pastor Bob follows Jesus' commandments to love God and love neighbor, to be an ally to those who need one. And allies are desperately needed these days because diversity alone is not enough. Diversity alone, without engagement across difference and in this context of polarization, leads to synagogue shootings and mosque burnings. So Bob calls his flock into allyship to Muslims and Jews who are under threat. This is also a ministry to our broader cultural wounds. It is a salve to our collective mistrust of religion in general and white evangelicals in particular. That is not the salvation he went to seminary to offer, but it is a kind of salvation. Pastor Bob is a true minister to his own large congregation, to evangelicals, and to Christians broadly. His very allyship itself is a ministry to our broken world and to his Muslim and Jewish friends. That ministry and allyship is why I am honored to co-present to him the El-Hibri Foundation Fearless Ally Award.
On January 2014, deep in the mountains of Nepal, a friendship was born that was unlike any other. And an American imam who immigrated from Sudan met an evangelical pastor from Texas while walking and hiking. That imam was me. And the pastor the man we are honoring today, Bob Roberts. It was unlike any friendship, unlikely meeting. After all, as Bob always says, the group of people that have the worst misunderstanding about Muslims are evangelical Christians. And the worst among them are pastors. In that unconventional meeting, as Bob and I got talking, we came up with the idea to gather pastors and imams together in Texas to do exactly what we were doing at that time. Talk, discuss, and think critically about how to be transformative service to our national community. And we did it. Just a few months after that, in May 2014, Bob took care of the arrangement on the ground, hosting the group in a big mansion in Texas. He does not own it. Somebody else give us. Just to clear that. You have to remember the most of these pastors had never met Imam before. For the first time they met the Imam. They came only because they trusted Bob. You can imagine in the beginning of the retreat, the tension in the room. But the way that Bob spoke in the opening session transformed the mood of the room. He said, everyone should relax. We are going to do horseback riding and do some shooting. The men were excited about horseback riding, but the Imam were not sure about the shooting. Because after all, this Texas, and they weren't sure whether that was set up. I think all you have heard of something called entrapment. I remember that night, all of us sitting outside, dressed in t-shirts, enjoying the good Texas weather and chatting. Bob started telling jokes. And then he asked me to share some of my jokes. And the air was filled with laughter. That was the beginning of real friendship between the imams and the pastors. And of course, when the religious leaders tell jokes, all of them should be clean jokes. What is the comedian? At least Muslim imam stick with that. We'll all stay late at night, talking and sharing and laughing for hours. And like that, the big wall had fallen. Bob had that ability to bring people together, to invite them to let their guards down, to be vulnerable, to be honest, to find joy and beauty in the company of others. One of the pastors told me, I only did this retreat because I trusted Bob. I didn't really know what to expect, but now I'm so happy that I came. I'm sorry that we did not get to meet before this. Bob has funny ways of sharing information. He keeps asking me always in a Christian gathering whether I believe in Jesus or not, using the question and answer form to engage people. Many people don't know that Muslims believe in Jesus, and this is the way of him telling them that Muslims do believe in Jesus. It is a good entry point into a more important conversation through humor. Another time when we were together in Florida with a group of pastors, rabbis, and imams, in the middle of the dinner in the restaurant, Bob shouted to all pastors, Majid has asked me a question. Did Jesus eat pork? It took them some time, but eventually all of them said, we don't think so. And that was the first time an imam has ever given fatwa to pastors. But Bob is also a serious man and a sincere one. I was in a meeting with Bob where I met an Islamophobe whose organization has written many articles about me and my community. While I was confronting him, that guy, Bob came and listened beside me. And the man turned and asked Bob, do you know him? And Bob said, yes, he's a good man, and he's my dear friend. The man replied, really? Do you know these people? Do you know they use something called taqiyya? Only Muslims know that. Taqiyya. Like when they're hiding bad feeling and they show you a good face. Bob said, I don't know what you're talking about. All I know, he's a good man. I'm honored to be his friend. Bob truly values his relationship and he's sincere in the way he represents them. I often remember years later when Bob, Rabbi David Silverstein, and myself traveled to Bangladesh to visit the Rohingya, 2017. Together we listened to the story after story of people who were suffering through very difficult times, and we were completely all of us in tears. Bob turned to me and said, "This is why we need to continue doing our work in America, so we can create a better society free of hate and bigotry, one that does not discriminate against religious and racial minorities." When we came back to the United States, both Bob and David were passionate and effective advocates for the Rohingya people, from the meeting with the State Department to many other platforms. Bob has faced troubling consequences for being an open, loving individual, committed to building bridges with minority communities, especially with Muslims. He has even had members leave his church as a result, but that did not ever make him change his mind and waver in his conviction, because he's always said, Jesus wants him to love all people, no matter the cost, no matter the consequences. I know Bob could not do this work without the strength and the support of his wife, Nikki, and his wonderful family. Now he has his daughter and his son-in-law are here. They surprise him, Gail and Lee. Make sure, and his wife often has Muslim women over in her home, and she told Bob, I have Muslim women over the house. They wear a scarf. Make sure you text me before you come home. As you can see, Sharia is creeping in the pastor's home. My daughter recently mentioned to me that the names Bob and Muhammad are the most common names. She's here. I think we should write a children's book called When Bob Met Muhammad. That can be read to little boys and girls over America as a bedtime story. Imagine that. As an example of what can come out from blessed friendship. If you want to talk to me about the book, we can talk later. I would like to thank El-Hibri Foundation for the great work they do for all American Muslim communities and for all communities for this beautiful country, and for the recognition of this beacon of light tonight. I know all of them are doing outstanding work. And thank you, Bob, for what you do and what you are, and what you have done and continue to do, wonderful, and for your wonderful friendship, working together to change many people's minds and hearts so that America will remain the home of loving and compassionate people. Bob, it is my honor to present to you this wonderful award from El-Hibri Foundation, along with, I have to pronounce the name correctly, Bernice Mary Gowdy, Lisa Jones Gentry, and Dr. Alison Raffle, and Farhan Latif, the 2019 Fearless Ally Award.